What up? What up? Can I give myself a little bit round of applause?
You're exclusive.
I love them all. It's so hard to pick just. It's like trying to pick a child, a favorite child.
I also believe that everybody is special. That's the thing. It's discovering what makes you special and different from everybody else.
So
Whoa, that's $8 to $10 million a month.
it was more than that. It was a lot of money, and we had a lot of perks, and I had over 300 gas stations that I operated.
Hello, Tom Lavecchia here, and Happy New Year 2018. I'm extremely excited about this next guest, Teo Rockson, who is a rock star. Now, he does a lot of stuff, so there's no way I can do it justice, but he's a millennial thought leader. He has a podcast, which we'll speak about. He's launching an online platform, and he has recently been appointed or listed as top 40 millennials to follow in 2018 by our very own Jeremy Slate for our magazine portion of New Theory. Teo, welcome to the New Theory podcast. How are you doing today?
It's a pleasure, Tom, and thanks for having me. And it was a great honor to be featured on your platform. But you're right. I do a lot of things, but the way I normally describe myself is at the core of what I do is I'm a communicator. So I help people communicate effectively across cultures or communicate the messages with impact.
I love it. Hold that thought. I do want to say one more thing before we start. Because I try to give, or I do allow as much editorial freedom as possible. So when the list was submitted, I obviously checked this. Everyone on the list, whether I agree with them or not, they're there because that's what makes New Theory great. But what I like about you is because if I could tell you how many people are motivational speakers, online platforms, it's a white hot space. But there's a lot of people in it, and you don't seem like you're full of shit. So and that's what I kind of like about you. So what I want to start off with first, and I don't mean to cut you off, but what I want to start off first is give us your formative years. Where did you grow up, and what makes you you?
Well, that's actually pretty essential to what I do today. So I'm a Nigerian. I grew up in 5 countries and 4 continents by the time I was 18, and
wow.
And that plays a huge part in what I do today because what I do is help people communicate across cultures. But my background was like that because of my dad's job as a diplomat. And if I were to take you back even further, the first 9 years of my life were spent in a military dictatorship. And then I started to travel back and forth as we transitioned into civilian government. So there was Sweden, there was Vietnam, there was Burkina Faso, and United States, as well as Nigeria. And, when you grow up as the minority everywhere you grow or you move or you live in, you sort of either figure out a couple things, whether you end up being really, really sad and depressed, or you figure out how to make friends across these divides. And so that's what I did. And ultimately, when I came to the United States when I was 17, I came here for school. And I've been here on and off, either launching a business, working, or going to school in some format.
Okay, so your father was a ambassador for Nigeria or for America?
Diplomat for Nigeria. Not an ambassador, it was a diplomat.
Oh, diplomat. Yeah. Okay, so
yeah.
Cool. Did you get out of parking tickets or not? Or that's just only him?
People always said I did not have any of those privileges at all. That was not me. But yeah, so I got in trouble just as much as anybody did. But
Love it. Now, what I'm filtering from this is by you moving around a lot and always having to make new fast friends and not knowing how long that friendship's going to last. You being personable was almost a kind of a survival mechanism. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was my survival instinct. I went from having this identity crisis to learn how to use that as a gift. I mean, it was the only way I could make friends, to ask, girls out if I wanted to go to dance, to just go into schools, to get jobs. I needed to be able to speak to my advantage on what it is why they needed to really take me seriously. And so when you sort of have this inferiority complex as you keep moving, you really have to develop some sort of chameleon skin or confidence to be able to make yourself feel comfortable in a different environment because you keep getting thrown in every 3 to 4 years.
All right. So you're a workaholic. I'll tell you why. It's New Year's Day, and we're here, right? So you don't mess around. You get right to it. You know, there's no days off for you. Give us kind of the genesis of that work ethic.
Absolutely. And so it was funny, you were joking around earlier about having access to parking tickets. But when you grow up Nigerian and the first 9 years of your life is a military dictatorship, a lot of Nigerians just have this idea of hustle ingrained in you, because there are a lot of stereotypes and a lot of things that people tend to associate with us in our country. And so when we get put in foreign environments, hard work is something that you have to do. So I'm the oldest of three boys, and when I first came to America, it was me, my youngest brother who was in high school, and I have a brother that's 10 years younger than me. And my parents told me, you're the father now, right? And you've got to set the example because everybody's watching you. So I knew early on that I couldn't afford to just mess around. And so there was that element. And then it was also the element of me understanding that with certain American systems, you only afforded certain types of visas for jobs. And I've always been sort of this rebellious guy who felt like he could chart his course if he worked hard enough. And so in order for me to qualify for certain types of visas that I have now, O1 visa, I needed to have certain qualifications and certain accolades. And so that just drove me to continue to work. And then the ultimate thing is I've always wanted to change the world since I was 10. I wanted to build the next set of global leaders. And I don't believe that comes from not working hard to understand your target market. And that is an everyday thing. It's not a thing that you do every once in a while.
All right. So we laid a good foundation. You have in America kind of you do have an immigrant mentality, which I'm a son of immigrants. And I think that is not a crutch. I think it's actually an advantage nowadays because you can't, feign hustle. So you got the hustle, you got the intelligence. So you kind of brought us up like around 17, 18 or so. So give us your educational journey, then how did that morph into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so education, my highest form of education is an MBA. I have an MBA from Fordham. I got my undergrad in a college called Liberty University in Virginia, and Fordham here for my MBA. And a lot of that, yes, I was joking, say, even though I got a business degree and a communications degree, a lot of what I learned was from the actual cities I lived in. I learned a lot about business from New York City itself. I went to Fordham, but New York City was my campus. My podcast is well into my career, and that came about from conversations that I was having. So the school played a good foundation in sort of maybe branding me and allowing me to go into some certain doors, but also exposing me to potential networking opportunities. But what I learned was that, today's world education system, I have a love-hate relationship with it because I feel like you can learn a lot more without having to spend $20,000 every semester. But that's just my controversial take for the day.
Well, that's no, because I it's kind of funny because I also have an MBA, not as strong. Fairleigh Dickinson in New Jersey, good school, not maybe as strong as Fordham, but a Fordham MBA is formidable. So I like to ask questions and learn about your plan going in, and then how did you pivot? So what was a plan to get to the MBA, and then prior to signing or when you were enrolled, what was a plan afterwards, and then what actually happened?
Absolutely. So the plan was, I had been stuck in a job I hated for 2 years, and this was after applying to 85 jobs, and I just finally gave in because I was like, man, no one's going to hire me without a special type of visa, and I don't think I'm actually going to do the international things that I said I always wanted to do, and so I just basically went back to everyone that gave me an internship before and said, hey, could you hire me? And would you be willing to sponsor my visa? And so one of them gave me a chance. But after that, 2 years, I had a near-death experience. I was driving to this place of work, and then all of a sudden, my lane gets cut into half. And then I swerve out of the way so I don't get hit. I mean, it's in the highway, 60 miles per hour, and I smash into the left guardrail, poof, and then right guardrail, poof, bad. I hit one car, and then two cars, poof, poof, and then back to the left guardrail. I'm 22 years old. The car is perpendicular to the bridge, about to flip over. And I was freaked out because I thought I was about to die. And the only question that came to my mind, thought that came to my mind was, have you done everything you said you were going to do? And I obviously hadn't. And, these things happen. Adrenaline kicks in. I slammed the brakes. And then I somehow managed to get out of the car unscathed, even though my car was totaled and there were 2 cars hit. And if you were standing right there on the road with me, you'd have seen a car zoom past and zoom, and you'd have seen all this debris everywhere. And I just took that as a second chance. I was like, you know what? I'm moving to New York City because that's the only city that I ever felt alive in, and reminded me of the potential that I could achieve. The cliche thing, lights are inspiring. And the only way, as an international student, for me to get there was to go to school. It was also the only way I could please my parents, because doing a crazy thing to quit a job that gave you a visa to go to another city in an immigrant and a Nigerian household is not the easiest thing to explain. So I going to school was the easiest way for me to do that. And so I applied to schools in New York City, got into Fordham, and then that began my journey. So that was why I went to school, because that was my only way as an international to actually be considered legal here.
Got it. Okay. So all right. So then give us your first job outpost, right? And then give us where you at in the entrepreneurship journey. Did you do that? And just get us up to speed. So I'm really excited to hear what's next.
Oh, awesome. So when I came to New York, like I said, I really made New York City my campus, and I had just been really shaken by that near-death experience. I was like, I can't believe I almost died and I didn't do anything. So every time I would always take advantage to go to conferences and events. And there was this one event, Ariana Huffington, she was still at Huffington Post then, and she was putting out a Thrive event. Now she has Thrive Global, but this was the beginning, the genesis of that. And she put out this 3-day conferences, and they were giving out free tickets to some students. So someone in Fordham said, "Hey, I got free tickets to this," and I love media. I was like, "Yep, I'm going." And so I went there, and for 3 days, I would just stay there for it was about 8 hours a day for these 3 days, and I was so inspired by all these minds. And she made a comment. She talked about how her, despite her strong Greek accent, she felt like she could still have a voice for people. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm a Nigerian that doesn't appear to look like a typical Nigerian or sound like a typical Nigerian. What if I create a podcast that highlighted people that look like they're not supposed to sound and sound like they're not supposed to look? And I would call it As Told by Nomads. And then after that event, I just created the podcast, and it led to sort of these random opportunities where you have. And the podcast started I think it was August 14, 2014. That's the date. And I started to put it out. I reached out to a few people on Twitter and said, "Hey, would you want to be on a guest?" Luckily, they said yes. And within a few months, it started to pick up traction. And I had this opportunity where I had an audience, but I didn't quite know how to monetize. And the journey to entrepreneurship began. The up and downs, I got to tell you, are crazy, because in that span, I got fired twice in the span of 3 years. I owed a lot of money to the school, and I owed money to some friends. But in the process, it was the only time I ever felt fulfilled, because I felt like I actually added a community and voice with something that I wanted to do. And then gradually, I was able to get smarter by figuring out how to turn that into speaking opportunities, into consulting with companies, and ultimately coaching leaders.
Okay, because that's the dirty truth. Podcasts are not money makers. I do accept sponsorship for it. If you see if there's a sponsorship, I'll include a link on the bottom. But it's not big money. The whole idea is to put out some really kick-ass content, and then to help grow your platform. So for our case, this new theory for you, as told by Nomads, is to grow, Teo Rockson, which you're doing a great job at. So now, how long have you been? Okay, so you've been doing the podcast since 2014, and then how long have you been, speaking? And then how long did it take? Because I like to be kind of step by step. How long did it take to start getting paid for gigs? When did you stop having the waiter? When did you stop having diarrhea and oh crap, I'm not going to make my monthly nut? How long did that take? And then now, how are you monetizing your platform? And what do the numbers look like in terms of listenership? So it's a loaded question, but I love to hear it.
Nah, it's fine. So it's it took a while to make any. I still don't make any money on my podcast, by the way. I just keep it sort of the way it is, because I love just the audience and all that. But it took me about almost 2 years before I really started making money in 2014, because I started to take other jobs, right? What I ended up doing was, in order for me to supplement and continue to do what I was doing with my podcast and build the audience, I just, would say, okay, I'll take this consultant job. I have an MBA degree. I have the pedigree, and I'll work there for 8 to 9 hours, and then I'll do the other 9 hours, and then go to sleep for like 6, and then start over the next day. And so I was doing the 2 jobs. I was building the community, writing my blog, going to random one-off speaking engagements, and then when I got fired the first time, I was like, golly, this is crazy. Good that I saved enough. And then it started to dry out really quickly, and I started to really wonder if I should still continue to do the podcast because it wasn't getting monetized. And my old boss reached out to me and said, hey, I'm heading up this new startup. I see what you've done with your podcast. I want you to come replicate that in my company. Now, I thought, my goodness, this would be great. I could actually just fuse this into the company, and it wouldn't be like I'm working double time. Nice. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case because the mission wasn't the same, right? The skill set was the same where they needed me as a marketer and someone that could tell stories, but it wasn't the same topic. And so it became the same sort of thing. And then what started to happen, though, was I started to gain a lot of traction on my podcast, where I started to get invited to the World Bank, the United Nations Foundation. I was doing keynotes and all these things. And my boss at the time started to really notice this, and he said, I think you need to focus on the other job because I don't think your attention is here. And it was a friendlier fire than the first time, but he said, honestly, I feel like we're just going to have to let you go. And so he did that. And even though I was gaining traction, I was still a little scared because I thought, man, this means there's no standard paycheck for the 2 weeks. And like the immigrant mentality, I just doubled down on everything, reached out to 100 companies almost every week. And I started to get 1 or 2 yeses. And then that led to some great performances by me on stages. And that led to more referrals. And before I knew it, I was speaking at an average 50 times a year. And
what percentage of those were paid?
Well over 70.
Wow. Wow.
And
okay.
I started to get a lot of paid speaking gigs, and what happened was because I had done a lot of free stuff in the past when I wasn't making any money, like the World Bank, 3 TEDx talks, those things, even though they're free, they give you cachet and responsibility. And then my podcast is in 150 countries, and it does well between that 20,000 to 40,000 range downloads, and that it really gave me this credibility that I hadn't been leveraging when I had a job. And what happens with your listeners, I want you to understand, is when you feel like you have no option, you feel like there's nothing else that you can do, you quickly learn how to brand yourself and leverage every single advantage you have. And that's what I did for the past 2 years. And thankfully it led me to get into doors that I wanted to do. But it really just took me jumping, because I contend that I had the ability to do this 4 years ago. I just, if I didn't get fired, I don't think I would have been brave enough to actually just focus 100% on it.
Now, I love it. I love it because you really got to it. Because some of the things that I struggle with is, did we need the MBA, right? On one end, we're like, no. But on the other end, sometimes we give your business card out and they see the MBA, it might get you that talk or that gig. So, we can push and pull on that. But the other thing is you kind of got right to it in terms of people will go to a startup or go wherever and gain, I guess, some credibility because they worked wherever they worked. But with you, your credibility is like yourself. So how do you I like you already, you know what I mean? And that's why I wanted to take the time today on a holiday to spend time talking to you. But how do you build credibility not being, the traditional guy who went to that startup, had a big exit, had money to kind of sit back on and had that big win? So how, is it through your podcast, or how do you build credibility? Because I like what you're about, and I want to credential you. So I get a better feel for how you build your credibility.
So it really comes down to understanding your core skill. So I looked at my life, my personal and professional life, and I saw the synergy was, I'm this kid that's grown up in 5 countries, 4 continents. I understand what it's like to exist in different environments. You look at the world right now. So basically, I connected to the problem. The world right now, you've got Brexit, you've got the election, you've got all these crazy problems going about because people don't understand how to interact with people's backgrounds. And I said, this is something I've done all my life. This is what my podcast is about. This is what I've written on. This is what I've spoken on. These are the proofs from the personal end, from the professional end, and to back it up with credibility, look at what the World Bank and TEDx are saying. And I would pitch companies, HR, CEOs, and people like that and say, a lot of people work for most of their lives. Wouldn't it be better if you allow them to be themselves and you create environments that allow them to feel like they could express who they are? And this is how it actually impacts your company, because you have more productive, more innovative people. And then I said, I will help you with the unconscious bias. I'll help you with your diversity training. And I also help you facilitate those difficult conversations when you have things like the recent elections. And that was really appealing to people, because if you remember in the last 3 years, even before the election to the election, people were just on high alert because of the shootings, all the Black Lives Matter movement and everything. And people didn't really either know how to deal with the backlash, or people didn't know how to deal with people in the minority community like me and other people who were really saying, hey, it's time that you all paid attention to us. And so I positioned myself as the person that could help bridge those divides. And that was attractive to companies, also individuals, as well as schools.
That's brilliant, because you're kind of saying, hey, here's my space, here's my core competency. You're not trying to be who you're not, right? You're not trying to say you grew up in the inner city in Chicago. You're saying, hey, I'm a Nigerian immigrant, I'm educated, although I probably, and again, we don't need to get personal, but you had some challenges in your life. You talked a little bit about having a near-death experience. So you're kind of owning what you're owning. I love it. And then you mentioned, so you get about 30,000 downloads, per episode?
Yeah, is it 30? I think it's 10,000, and it ends up being 30,000-ish a month.
That's a lot. That's a lot, my friend. That's not a small number for a podcast.
In the podcast world, it's funny because I used to think that was, but a lot of people will talk about, because when people would tell me to advertise and I'll talk to advertisers, they're like, well, you need a little bit more. I'm like, all right, fine.
Well, you're in a tricky spot, because on one end, you're not getting, 100,000 downloads, so you're not going to get big advertisers. And then some of the smaller advertisers, they don't have the budgets. For 30,000, you can justify, charging something. So, but okay, so now you're launching an online platform. It's about to go live. Walk us through that specifically. This is your chance. Give us the price point. You better give our listeners a coupon code so they can save some money, and walk us through that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, based on my life in the past 7 years, essentially, a lot of times people would come up to me to say, how did you get to the point where you get your signed speaker? You've done 3 TEDx talks. I used to follow your career on Facebook, and I sort of saw you live out this struggle life, and then your consistency paid off because now you're speaking consistently, and it's not like just for free. So how do you get to the point where you're now recognized thought leader in diversity and inclusion, as well as communication, and how do you get paid for your expertise? And I'm a very nerdy guy. I take notes on every process, and I've obviously interviewed over 300 people, so I have a lot of information. And so I basically just compiled that into a step-by-step guide on what you need to do in order to identify your passion and then be a thought leader in that industry that you aspire to be. And my ultimate goal, I say my LinkedIn, is to impact the lives of 3 billion people, because there are 3 billion people under 30, and I believe those are the next level global leaders. And so if you want to build leaders, I feel like you need to train them to be able to be the champions of their movements. And that's what this course is about. It's a step-by-step guide towards helping you identify what your core passion is, how to use that passion and turn that into media mentions, how to use that to attract speaking opportunities that you get compensated for, and also how to end up creating platforms, whether it's courses or other online things, that really position you as the go-to individual in your industry. And it's a 3-month program. We just wrapped up the early bird. The early bird was $2,500, but it's $3,000 for 3 months. And I believe it's $1,250 a month if you can't do the $3,000 for 3 months. But I'll send the link and then obviously coupon codes. But yeah, that's what it is. And it opens on the 14th of January. Really excited. We already got a bunch of enrollments in. A lot of people did the early bird. We ran a challenge during December, and a lot of people signed up for the program. But really excited about the opportunity to really just watch people build their movements now and be able to say that, oh my goodness, they are changing the world. That's what it's all about for me.
All right, so I go on your platform, and I pluck down the $3,000. It's a 3-month program, and what is it? Is it didactic sessions? Is it live? Give us I know you kind of glossed over, but give us.
Sorry, yeah. It's funny because I always have a podcast as well. I'm always thinking of the other podcast. I'm like, I don't want to. I want to make sure I'm just giving a short bite so that he can always do that.
No, yes. I can tell you got media training in your answers, but I want to go a little deeper.
Okay. All right. So, yes, it's a combination of modules and live training. Every week there'll be a call. Me and my partner, Amanda Rivera, will go through individual sessions on where we share strategies of mindset, speaking, communication, and thought leadership. But you for the 3 months, what you're paying for is also live access to us. There's mentorship calls, on-demand training, as well as just basically live workshops through every. We'll pick 5 people every week to basically say, hey, we'll work through your potential brand and positioning you out there. And also the network that we have between both of us, we've. You're in the media field, you understand this. We've built several relationships with, the Entrepreneurs Forbes, the Fortune, every type of media classification that you think of. And we have all those people who are willing to come in and also share knowledge as well. So it's not just us you'll be hearing from. You'll be hearing from thought leaders from different spaces who would spend an hour of the time every week to come talk about growth hacks or brand building as well.
So I like this because I can walk away with maybe doing my own PR, which is going to cost you $2,500 out of pocket, right? Because if you learn how to build your own brand and get the word out there, I know it's not PR training, but what I'm saying is if you're able to do that yourself based off of the skill sets that you develop in your course, that can easily save somebody $2,500 or $30,000 a year. But then,
absolutely,
and then also building their brand, because I believe in it, and I believe 99% sure you're gonna agree with this, that I think no matter who you are, I think you need to not only create content, but I think you need to be the medium. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I want you to contribute to New Theory. Don't get me wrong, right? And I think you should, write for Forbes and Entrepreneur and all that's great, right? But I think that people now should create content, but also be the medium, which is their podcast, their website, their platform, and then, launch that medium out there. Are you kind of doing that, or is that kind of a little bit out of scope?
No, it's. I mean, like you and I both started our careers the same way. When I launched my podcast, it was me telling my story, right? I was just saying there are not enough people like us who sort of in between cultures, and I want people to embrace the global identity. I did not predict then that it would yield into a full-on consultant firm on diversity and inclusion, as well as something that really works with schools and people on developing their brands. And, it's all, so I always encourage people to start with a story. But what this is really reminding people of the ability that they have with today's devices to create a brand that they own, whether it's their website or their podcast or their YouTube show or their vlogs, and know how to leverage that into more opportunities. So you're not, tied down to just having a mention there. You can get a mention based on your own platform, but it's not going to be because that platform validated you. It's because you are already validated yourself, and then what's happening then is just cake and gravy. So, it's